Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We last covered my Mini-Me truck, I guess it was like about a week or two back, and I had said that I was really going to try hard to get back to the channel and do some rig reviews and things like that, and surprise, here we are. Had some time and decided let's get this done. And what I wanted to talk about is this green dually. So this was the truck that I specifically built for iOS, or I guess I should say rebuilt for iOS for the gallery. And my goal was to reclaim the Best Engine Bay award, which I had previously won the year before with this blue K5 Blazer, which was another truck that I had kind of attained and then redone, redid, reworked the whole bit. So I wanted to kind of go over this green dually, fill you guys in on what's what, and then bring you up and close, show you what I guess made this engine bay the best engine bay out of all the ones that were at the event. I will say, important note is that last year and this year, best engine bay was won by one single vote. So that just goes to show you that specifically when it comes to scale RC now, especially when there's a gallery, people are really putting in a lot of great attention to detail into their engine bays, and the competition for that is it's tough. It's tough. There was a lot of really excellent engine bays. This truck in particular came out really awesome. This is some of what I feel like my best work in a long time. In terms of not only just the engine bay, but the weathering and airbrushing that I put into this. So for starters, I bought this truck used. It changed hands a bunch of times. It was, I believe, originally built by JCM Customs, and then it changed hands and changed hands and changed hands, and then I think like at least 3 or 4 times, and then I ended up with it. And the issue was that by the time I ended up with the truck, it wasn't as nice, I think, as it once was. It originally had a very nice, like base coat, clear coat, like automotive paint job on it, and it was like a pretty looking truck. By the time I got it though, there was some paint defect issues that I was unaware of. The interior and things like that, that I don't know if just over time degraded or maybe just wasn't done as well originally. Either way, it's not to knock anyone in the past, but the truck was a 4-digit price tag truck, and it just really wasn't up to my personal standards. So originally I had tried to polish out the paint and it came up nice, but there was just some issues because I believe this body set originally started as an RC4WD drive limited Blazer body, because beneath the green and the other layers and stuff is this blue that kind of looks like that. And then the body was clearly converted from a Blazer into a pickup truck using what I believe is shrink RC parts from Jesse. It's definitely for sure his dually flares, and I believe his bed extension and cab backing for sure. So I'm pretty sure it was mostly done with that, and I believe that JCM had done the conversion originally. It also has the shrink RC Cal hood and a version 1 RC4WD drive Lund visor on it. So after I polished it, one of the biggest issue was I think because there's so many layers of paint, and whether automotive paint was used or not, it looked like at some point, maybe while getting packaged or up between being sold, the bubble wrap left like impressions in the paint, like maybe it was hot and then the bubble wrap sitting against it, and it kind of like it actually like marred the paint, like it left like a weird pattern like physically in the paint, and there was just gonna be no way of fixing that without basically repainting the whole truck. And if anyone that knows me, I always talk about how much I hate like doing the full paint jobs. Like they never come out good. I always have these weird issues with the paint reacting and it wrinkles, and it's just a nightmare for me. So I don't like painting. Usually I have body shops paint my stuff if I'm looking for a nice paint job. So with this particular truck, after I polished it, still wasn't happy with it. I decided to go the weathering route, which at iOS this year seemed to be a pretty big theme. Was, weathered, battered, beat up old trucks, which is definitely awesome because there's a lot that can be done with that. You can go really wild or a little mild. For this particular truck, I was kind of aiming for something that was maybe like a West Coast truck that got beat up by the sun and then kind of came east to the Rust Belt, and now it's been here and now it's starting to deteriorate a bit. And that was kind of my goal with it. So after what I did was, my process was I blocked the whole thing down with like a red Scotch-Brite pad, and then doled it all out. And then in certain spots, I grabbed like some 600 or whatever, and just really started to like burn through the paint in some spots to give it that fade. I then used a mixed combination of Sophisticated Finishes, which is a real rust product, as well as a Createx rust-colored airbrush paint. And between the two of those, I really obtained what I think is a really great look for the rust and weathering on this particular truck. So super happy with the way that the finish came out overall. I'm sure that you could see that the visor and the cowl hood is not nearly as weathered as the rest of the truck. And to me, that would make sense because those would be something that was, added on as aftermarket parts somewhere down the road of the life of the truck. And they're also fiberglass, so they wouldn't necessarily, weather out as much as, the original paint on the truck. And obviously they're not going to rust because they're fiberglass. So that was, specific choice that I made to do. And I was kind of glad that a lot of people recognized that fact at iOS, that it wasn't as, those parts weren't as weathered as badly as the rest of the truck. So that was kind of cool. One of the other things that I did, this hobby is all about learning from others. And I watch Josh at RC every day quite a bit on YouTube. And I utilized his paint weathering method on the front and rear bumpers. The sponge technique that he does with these, I think they're called like cheap acrylic paints. It's this brown and this orangey color, and it really gave an absolute awesome finish on the front and rear bumpers. So the back bumper is an RC4 Drive Tough Armor, and the front is the SSD bumpers that I like to run. They're actually meant for the Bronco, but they work awesome on the K-bodies. So that came out great. Was really happy with that result. And then the wheels, I spent a lot of time on, making them look old and crappy and rusty. These are discontinued RC4 Drive 1.7s with the 1.55 stomper stretch over them. And that size wheel for the little bit larger than 10th scale body is like the perfect fit. It really looks like a true 16.5 wheel, something that would be on the truck from back in the day. And it's hard to beat the Rock Stompers, even though they're not licensed. They're probably one of their best looking tires to date, in my opinion. The old school TSL, it's just very fitting. So the truck itself is a TF2. It has an AM Pro long wheelbase conversion, even though it's technically a long wheelbase TF2. It's even longer because of the long bed. So it had those parts on there when I got the truck, and they were printed in a subpar print resolution. I'm super OCD about that, so I bought the file, reprinted everything on my Bamboo X1C with the point 2 nozzle or whatever it is, the smaller one, and at the smallest layer height, and more infill, so the parts are a little bit stronger. And that came out good. So it's got K44 axles. It has a standard driveline, TF2 driveline. It does not have a scale driveline because I utilized the RC4 Drive scale engine bay, which we're going to dive up and close and personal with that shortly. Those are absolutely excellent. And then you can kind of save some bucks, not do the whole scale driveline with the separate engine, because these engine bays, when you do them right, they look absolutely fantastic. So Smithbuilt Designs headache rack and toolbox, and DBI made me the in-bed fuel cell. I'll show you guys what that looks like. That came out awesome. He does great work, and I detailed that up and weathered it and dirtied it up. It looks really good. The interior was an afterthought. I wasn't originally going to do a really wild interior, and then I made really good progress in the engine bay, had some time left over, and kind of just went down a rabbit hole and ended up doing the Traxxas GRC dash conversion. I had started a couple of those and never really quite finished them, so I took the one from my one purple K10 project and just went to town on it and got it all wrapped up and got that installed in this thing, and it looks really, really awesome. I did some additional work on the bench seat that was already there. It was already covered like pretty nicely, but not perfectly. And I added scale piping to that and some additional like vinyl and stuff. I vinyled the floor. I dirtied everything up. I printed and designed my own accurate like MP 203, 205 transfer case shifter, correct to these trucks. That looks way better. I converted the truck from an automatic to a 4-speed. So just a bunch of little details. I tried to really spend a lot of time on the details of this one more than anything else. And then, the purpose of this thing is to, be a tow rig for, like one of my other trucks, or, specifically my Mini-Me, which is what I had hooked up to it at the event and stuff while it was on display. So yeah, let me get you up close, because you won't be able to know all the details without seeing them, and we'll kind of go over what's what. And all right, so I have my headlamp on, because if there's one thing I'm learning over again with getting back into video is lighting can be a real thing. So in order to really capture all the details of the engine bay, hopefully this headlamp will kind of help show that as we go over it. Hopefully it doesn't make the video look too weird or anything like that, but it kind of does give it some nice clarity in terms of the weathering and stuff, so that you could see. For starters, so what I thought is really cool about iOS specifically is these little scale awards that Chris does. And then Frank, he also stopped by the booth, and he left off this little F-bomb for it, because he thought the dually was really rad. So shout out to him for that. That was super cool. I love little trinkets like that. So yeah, let's dive into my engine bay here. So for starters, one of the biggest things with this is that it is fully accurately wired. Okay. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that the engine harness and stuff that's in here is all done in the accurate coloring of a real Chevy K10, depending on what, year range variation stuff that you look at. So you can see that the wiper motor's all wired up. The harness goes over the top. It even has that little like rubbery grommet thing that GM would use on there. The high pressure sensor switch is even wired up for the AC. There's a coolant temperature sensor in there as well, and thermostat housing. Everything is done exactly how it's supposed to be. I have one of my 3D printed scale funnels in there, a Falvey Designs MSD box, and the rest of it's, a lot of the stuff is that just like what comes with the RC4WD drive engine bay kit. So they do a really great job with these, and then you could just kind of take them, that much further. So I wired up the battery as well. I also painted the factory jack just to kind of make that stand out a little bit. And then I'm sure you can kind of see in there that I even added scale leaves, which is an idea I got from Josh at RC Every Day. And even you could probably see them through the grill there. There's even ones that got like stuck through the grill and are stuck in between like the rad support and the radiator and all that. We've got a scale screwdriver and a 10mm socket, of course, sitting up there on the cowl as well. I made my own, hose clamps and things like that out of styrene. One of the things that I thought came out really good and was really cool was I did the air filter flip mod using the factory RC4WD drive snorkel, which took some work to get done. another detail, and I looked at a lot of people's engine bays while I was at the event, and this was a detail that a lot of people left out. But I actually opened up the end of the snorkel there, which is something that I did not see anyone else do. So I thought that was kind of a cool detail that I did that I didn't see anyone else do at the time. You can also see here you have a oil dipstick, and yep, that's fully removable, so you can check the oil. The vacuum line is all hooked up for the factory snorkel. The MSD box is appropriately wired. There is a coolant jug reservoir. The washer tank reservoir is there. There's a spare quart of oil in there, as well as a shop rag and stuff for checking the oil. So yeah, did a lot of detail work, a lot of rusting work, like say like on the master, and that's all done up accurately too with actual scale hardware. I made the cover hold down and stuff out of picture hanging wire. So I spent a lot of time trying to get this thing to look as accurately as possible. So the engine bay. All right, so something else that people always ask me about is the bug shields. This is probably one of the simplest things you guys can make yourself. It's just 030 plastic, Lexan. Like, you could probably even save stuff from scrap bodies or whatever. Just cut to shape. This is a chrome vinyl I got from Amazon. All right, and then I just use scale hardware to mount it, and that's a great look for it. The truck has Preston's scale hinges in on it, and it also has the scale looking wipers from Amazon. All right, so just some of the other details. You can see the front bumper, the weathering technique that I borrowed from Josh at RC Every Day. And then you can kind of see the rest of the weathering that I did on this thing myself, utilizing the airbrush and the Createx paint. The wheels in particular came out, I thought, really good. I painted them. I then did a wash on them. I then used the sophisticated finishes on them, and then, rusted them, and then also airbrushed them with the Createx as well. So those came out really good. Really happy with that result. See the Smithbuilt Designs headache rack and toolbox, and then the DBI printed bed fuel cell system. This was a file that I found off of Bamboo Studios for the old school Playmate cooler, and this was an old Gearhead RC pallet kit that I assembled and then weathered. 3D printed milk crate with scale jumper cables and extension cord and an axe. Crushed soda can, of course, and it's even, popped open to look like it was actually drank and used. The weathering on the tailgate came out really good. You can kind of see the different layers of like where it burned through the clear and stuff. I was really happy with that. Once again, it's the sponge method on the rear bumper from RC Every Day. New RC4WD drive CB antenna. And of course, every single one of my K-Series trucks gets the Traxxas K5 taillight mod. It just looks so much better with those. The truck just came out really, really good overall. I'm just happy with everything about it. I want to keep going with it. I'd like to do the underside with some brake lines and some additional weathering. I started to do some weathering and stuff. You can kind of see it on the shocks, but I just really ran out of time before iOS. But you can see the weathering technique patterns on the body that was utilized with the airbrush. This was I guess you can say, happy accident on the rear wheel. I had one of those paint reactions where it wrinkled, so I utilized that to my benefit and just made it look like it was a really old crusty dually wheel. Yeah, so this is it. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks.